Hello everyone, welcome to the session. My name is Morchin. I'm a community manager of Artisan. I'm also a digital fashion designer. I'm so happy to see all the speakers here. Shall we go around across the room? Let's introduce ourselves and maybe tell us a little bit more of what you do and what's your community.
Okay, I'll go ahead first.
Sure.
My name is Moyasora Briggs. I'm a photographer and a model, but I'm also the Tezos community lead for Rarible. I work very closely with the Tezos community, but not only within the Rarible marketplace. I work cross-platform, so I support artists. I curate exhibitions out here in the UK and also work on virtual exhibitions as well. And that's what I do for my community.
Cool. I'm happy to go next. So I'm Olivier, co-founder of Exclusible. I'm based in New York, but we are a Portuguese company with most of our team in Europe. We call ourselves the Farfetch or the Net-a-Porter of NFTs. Our marketplace is designed to basically help luxury brands tap into Web3 and distribute their NFTs to our community. We have a strong community of 100,000 members on Discord, 200,000 on Twitter, and we've done more than 12 projects so far since we started less than a year ago.
Awesome. I guess I'll jump in here and go next. Angelina, sorry to cut you off there. I'm Ivan. I am the creative director of digital culture here at PUMA, the sportswear brand. I oversee all our Web3 initiatives. I oversee a lot of our digital creative. I used to oversee our social media team as well, so really kind of rooted in the digital world. Before that, I actually used to work at the NBA, the National Basketball Association, doing digital there as well. So definitely have had some experience building some communities in the traditional Web2 world and now kind of exploring the Web3 world.
Cool. Last but not least, so my name is Angelina. I'm also known as Nine Travels Online. I'm the founder of Artiland, which is in a full Raspberry Dreamland, which is a sex and body positive metaverse for entertainment and events and relationships. We primarily focus on underrepresented communities such as LGBTQ, BIPOC, LATAM, women, specially abled people. And we would like to bring more voice and more capital to these communities and let them, dominate the other parts of the metaverse and eventually whole. Aside of that, I'm also the founder of Cyber Dreams DAO, which is the collective that is bringing the digital experiences. And the first one that we're doing is actually going to be our Burning Man camp this year that we're also bringing into the metaverse. We're actually mapping the entire playa with the existing experiences, so people who are not at the Burning Man can also experience a fraction of it. I'm a full-time digital nomad, currently in Colombia, Medellin. Yogini, pole dancer, diver, many things that kind of go off topic. I'm very excited to be here and talk about communities in Web3.
Thank you so much everyone for joining, and I love seeing speakers coming from different backgrounds. I guess my first question is fairly simple. It's for everyone. How do you define a community in Web3?
So who wants to go first? I'm happy to take a stab at it. For us, the very simple definition is people who basically understand our vision and what we are trying to build. And they follow us along, and then that community evolves into different strats, different layers. We started very early on. I think we opened our Discord a year ago before we had a landing page, a website, or anything. So very early on, we wanted to start building this small group of fans and followers at the beginning. We published a white paper where we established our roadmap, our vision, and what we were trying to build. We doxed ourselves very early on. We were very transparent, very public about who we were and what we were building. And then we started building with a few hundreds, a few thousands. And as soon as we started selling NFTs, that's when we grew into a more complex community with clients, very, I want to say like VIP clients, early adopters. And then the community grew and grew. And then within our community, we have to keep enriching them, creating value, and of course, gathering them through different interests within the overall Web3, digital fashion, luxury brands, and things like that.
Personally, for myself, I think what differentiates communities in Web 2 to Web 3 is the sense of trust, because I believe that what makes the community stronger and bound people closer to the product and to themselves is the understanding that they can understand where the project comes from, they can see things transparently, because things are documented in a blog, so they can easily understand that either project is scam or not. Obviously, there is a lot of scam projects that unfortunately build communities and then leave them without nothing. But in our experience, because before going into the metaverse, we were running events in the physical world. And building sort of like offline communities as well. And I think what differentiates them is what I just said, but also that makes them develop closer bonds between each other as well, and stay within this sort of core ecosystem that keeps on like expanding and growing to itself. Whether in Web2 communities, it tends to shift more often, and what is sometimes perceived to be the core doesn't stay as a core for that long. It keeps on fluctuating and change its shape. But if we were to draw the community in Web3, I would see it, like something with a huge solid center that starts to build up layers around it. Whether in a physical and in a Web2 world is more like, like this floating type of entity.
For me too, when I look at Web3 communities, I feel like the community members also have like a piece of ownership of the community too. If you look at NFT, obviously they own the actual NFT themselves, and in a lot of cases they can commercialize it and use the rights in a lot of different ways. If you look at DAOs, obviously if you're a part of a DAO, you are a voting member, and you actually get a piece of say what the DAO kind of does. A lot of metaverses obviously have kind of some DAOs attached to them too. So I really think like the idea of ownership is what kind of makes community unique in Web3, especially compared to Web2 communities. Like you are actually kind of invested into this community, and the better the community does, it's actually better for you too.
I think for me, coming from a traditional art space originally, there's a certain special type of interconnectedness within the Web3 community, especially for me working at an NFT marketplace and being like exposed to so many different types of artists. Stepping into Web3 and stepping into the NFT community, you're exposed to traditionally not just artists. Let's say if you were a photographer, normally your ecosystem would include maybe only photographers, but like within the Web3 space, you're exposed to a multitude of different individuals, a multitude of different organizations and individuals. And that, for me, that's like the special thing about Web3. Stepping into the space, you may decide that you're only going to focus on what you know, but there's something about the community that really pushes you to not only learn, but like expand the borders of what you want to do. And I think that's what makes the Web3 community really special.
Community building is very important for Web3 projects, but how has the community changed for the past 5 years? And what do you expect community, what would happen in the next 5 to 10 years? So my question is, what would a ultimate community, format of community would be? Would it become a DAO eventually, or?
So if we look at the past 10 years, communities were built on social media platforms. So you always need like a place where people talk, from blogs to then all the social media platforms came along. But that relationship was not a true community. Brands thought that they had communities, but it was more advertising platforms where it's a one-way discussion. you post a picture or a video, and then people can comment. And that, for me, it's the illusion of a true relationship and a true community. Then Discord came along, and now you have like a lot more solutions are being built to bring a more elegant solution to community building outside of Discord. And the idea is really into that. I completely agree with what Angelina said earlier, the trust, but also that two-way dialogue where people will not only talk to you as a brand, as a creator, as a corporation, whatever you represent, they will engage with you to keep pushing, good or bad, but they will be completely actively part of that process of creation. And then that discussion will also lose control. People will start chatting with each other, like the communities are building on top of each other. Always you are the entry point as the brand or the entity that created the community, but then it takes a life of its own. So for me, in the next 5 years, communities will be an absolute pivotal role in any type of corporate endeavor. Will DAOs become the new norm? I don't know. I'm not sure, because it doesn't really fit the objective of every entity. They have very positive aspects, good advantages, good benefits, but they also have limitations. But it's really the idea of that open two-way dialogue that, for me, it's extremely, extremely powerful, and gathering people around common interest.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that as well. Even in our example, because obviously, we're very sort of broad metaverse when it comes to what people can have. Obviously, we have our own niche, but it's exciting to see, how within our Discord, people start to create their own communities within the community, right? Like, for example, we have these new initiatives started by community members about their own branch of Lion Spaghetti Monster Church, which is kind of like ironic take on all type of like religious movements. And right now they have their own sort of like community lead, they have their own sort of like gatherings, they build their own world in our metaverse, and that's just like one of the examples, right? How like one sort of default community gave a birth to the other one. So I kind of see it like as a fractalic progression in a way, right? When like one larger entity then keeps on spitting the similar ones but slightly different in a continuous, never-ending form. So I think in a future, once we finally manage to integrate more like immersive technologies into our daily lives. I mean, we're already getting better with VR headsets, but still, a lot of adoption needs to happen. Hopefully, in 5-10 year times, VR is going to be like a mobile phone that you just put in casually at any point in time. Plus, add some little chip to your to your forehead and like go on a full multisensory ride. In that case, communities would have much more, vivid expression rather than a chat-based applications. And I think that's kind of where the whole fun will start, because then they would, be meeting like-minded individual and creating like-minded multisensory experiences that would be essentially their new worlds, if you like. Hopefully not a replacement of the physical. Hopefully we'll manage to maintain it. But I think the add-on that we can build through multisensory technologies, metaverse, and community building in Web3 is just so vivid. And I think we're in a really great time when we can start actually utilizing the potential of it in a really positive way.
I think, in my perspective, the main core of Web3 is obviously decentralization, and I think the future of community really depends on that, and also the way we apply utility to our communities, especially as platforms and marketplaces. And we've seen this amongst many projects. It's similar to what Olivier said, kind of giving the community power as well and inclusion in what we're doing. So I think very important, the use of tokens and utility within community would be very important, because like, for example, at Rarible we have what we call the Rari tokens, which grants holders of those tokens the ability to be involved in governance of Rarible and the protocol. And I think giving the community that power makes them not only feel involved, but also included. Because at the end of the day, we're building all these things for the community. And so I think the use of tokens and the use of utility, like as we continue to build that, that will definitely continue to foster a multitude of communities.
And kind of building off that too, it's gonna be interesting how I obviously work for a big brand, but it's gonna be interesting how big brands kind of enter this space and kind of use tokens, and to what degree will these brands kind of allow for their community to kind of govern them and make decisions for them. I think we've had a couple of interesting ideas here that I can't really talk too much about, but there's something really interesting about kind of giving the keys over to the community and letting them make some big decisions. So it's be really, for me, like I think that's like for the next 5 to 10 years, that's going to be the most interesting thing to watch, is like how do like traditional brands in the space that are massive are going to like really empower their community to make decisions for them. To what degree will that happen, you know?
I think my next question would be, what's the biggest challenge for luxury brands, traditional brands, to build community? As a brand that has hundreds of years or 50 years of foundation, how do they transform the idea of Web2 audience to Web3 community?
For me, I think it's just like an exciting opportunity, especially because how community is built in Web3, it's so like different than in the traditional ways where, traditionally like we would create a product, 16 to 24 months before we would actually be able to produce it. We'd go through this long supply chain of actually producing the product, shipping it, getting it in stores. We start doing photo shoots, then we market the product, and then we sell the product. But with how like Web3 is working, like in a lot of ways, it's like you're almost like building the plane as like you're flying it. So it's like you're kind of making these decisions of what the product will look like. The community's already there. The community's already super invested. They've already bought into it. And now they're helping you make these bigger decisions in the long term. So it like really kind of reverses the model, that a lot of traditional companies kind of follow. So for me, it's like really interesting. It's like, and that's also the really hard thing about being at a big brand too. It's like we're trying to, be a member of Web3 and be a part of the community, but it's like it completely shifts our business model. We're not really structured to do things that way. So it becomes, there becomes a lot of like logistical hurdles and things like that. But it's actually really exciting too because we're seeing the community really kind of. Sorry, it sounds like our fire alarm might go off here in a second. I'll go on mute.
So if I can build on that, because I also come from the brand side. I spent 18 years in the luxury world working for Cartier and then Goya and then Bastide, which is a beauty brand. And for me, one of the main challenges is actually mindset, because brands have to, the natural instinct when you start engaging with the community that we know in Web3, the natural instinct is to go into customer service type of mindset. If someone says something, it's like post-purchase customer service type of reflex. And I was like that at the beginning when we opened Discord, and I see now a lot of brands that we work with, we create a Discord channel for them in our Discord server, and then we encourage them to start interacting with the community. The minute someone says something bad, they go full on customer service mode. Like, we are so sorry to hear about how disappointed you are. We are going to try to change things. We're going to make things happen. And they try to literally like correct something that they think is wrong. Whereas that is not the case at all. You need to welcome, it's a discussion, it's a dialogue. You don't need to apologize. You need to explain, you need to debate. It's okay to disagree. And so it's funny because I changed myself a lot. When I go in Discord, like every day, talking to my community, they challenge us and we challenge them back, And that's the beauty of it, is that it's authentic. Again, we go back to the authenticity. It's a true relationship that can help you, that can support you, that can put you down. But the authenticity is really the most important thing, and then trust, and then you build off of that. So that mindset is very important for brands to understand the power of that community building.
Yeah, I mean, personally, don't have that experience working with larger brands who are trying to move into Web3 communities, but Just thinking about it, I would definitely agree with what Guy said just now. I think it also takes like a lot of time and approval levels to make certain decisions and to like how to act with the community, whether in a startup mode, in a Web3 mode, like you just don't take the time to like even ask somebody what you should like respond. You just respond, right? And then you just make things happen. It's again probably I'm gonna like say the same thing again. It's a mindset and the layering that it requires to go through to make something happen.
I think similarly to Angela, I agree with what both Olivia and Ivan said, but like especially with what Ivan said, a lot of brands and through conversations I've had, they've come from a very like one-sided delivery perspective, kind of what like Ivan said, where they have the product and it's just delivering the product. And in Web3, you can't really do that. We've seen this with one of one projects, PFP projects, generative projects. Like you can't just be like, hey guys, we made this thing, here you go. Everyone's going to be like, actually, first of all, you need to dox yourself. Like, who are you guys? What is this? Why do I even want this? Even if it's like a good product, within the community, people are going to be like, this is good, but you didn't really include us in the process. And I think it really all ties back to autonomy in a very weird way, whereas people are being like, we don't want to just be given things, or we don't want to just be the customer. Similarly to what Olivier said, we're not just customers anymore. We're all sitting in the driver's seat pretty much. And I think brands, although there's obviously, like everyone said, logistics and things like that have to go into it, brands kind of have to understand that the community wants to be involved. So, yeah.
And 100%. And if I can add to that, also the nature of the business is completely different, because we go from selling products, and Ivan knows that very well. You launch a collection, it's available for sale on e-com, in the stores, in your retailers permanently, until it's end of season and it just goes out, and then you make room for the new collection. Web3 is completely different cycle. If you're a successful NFT collection, it will sell out in a few minutes, in 24 hours, whatever, and then you're done. Then you have nothing else to sell for a few weeks, a few months. But doesn't mean that you cannot do anything, or you shouldn't do anything. That's the NFT collection, or the drop, or the metaverse experience is just the beginning. Then you need to keep cultivating that, building the community, building the roadmap, all of these things, and you do that through constantly trying to be creative, to engage and create value for your community. So it's a very different type of exercise compared to e-commerce and Web2.
In some ways, like you sell the product and then you do the marketing, instead of like the traditional sense where you do marketing leading into a product launch. Because like for most of these NFT collections, like you're not even sure what you're buying. Like you usually buy them pre-art reveal, and who knows what it even looks like. And like,
yes,
to kind of think about like that happening in like the real world, it just kind of seems so counterintuitive and so mind-blowing in a lot of ways. But again, like that's also why I love this space. Like it's a new like place to kind of play with and try things, and especially with a brand like PUMA, it's like we get to go and have this brand that has 75 years of history and be able to kind of play within this new space and try new things. So it's definitely exciting, but it's like in a lot of ways it just turns everything upside down for us.
Yeah, also to add to that, it's not just like you're selling a product, as like already guys said, but it's also the experience, the journey that comes with it. Because once you get like your first NFT, it's like your gateway into the whole range of things that are yet to come. And like the whole experiential economy is just like starting to get up to speed. And a lot of brands already like start to adopt it by kind of, creating some perks that people can get with their physical items. But generally speaking, even from the perspective of setting up the product, is a very different mindset that people need to be aware of when they start creating something. Because once you create one thing, you basically tie to this project for many, many years.
So my next question for Moyo, you are a community manager for Rarible, right? What do you do to actually bond and create engagement with your community?
I mean, a lot of the times it's really just conversation, like the most basic like form of it. It's similar to like what Olivier said. For me, coming from a traditional space, I would like to say it was a very lonely experience. And I got into NFTs around like 2 years ago. And it was so funny because all these years I'd been building kind of like alone, singularly, like working on my own. And then they just threw me into Discord and I was like, oh, this is everybody all at once, like everywhere. And going from conversation and actually hearing what people have to say, especially working in like the Tezos communities, like what I said earlier, it's being exposed to a multitude of people from like multitudes of different aspects of life. And for me, working with Rarible and working with Tezos, I hear what the community has to say and I work towards that. So it's really not me just being like, hey, I'm going to do this thing or I'm going to do that thing. You know, it's reaching out and hearing, what do you guys want me to do for you? And it's something for me as an artist also, it's something I wish I had experienced within the traditional space. And so with Rarible, working with the community, it's a lot of the times it's curating exhibitions, it's reaching out to collectors on behalf of artists to be like, hey, these people are making some of the best work in this space. It's doing things like this, also being able to talk about like the artists that I work with, working on panels. And I think, yeah, I mean, like it's what I said earlier, none of this would be possible without the community. If there's no community, we're not building anything. We're just building for building's sake. So I think everything I do within my job is for the community.
And Oliver, you are working with a lot of luxury brands. Are there any good examples that maybe some luxury brands have successfully transformed their mindset to Web3, or is there any brands doing this?
Sure. So a great example, it's Lacoste. They did an NFT drop a few weeks ago and they sold out pretty quickly. And then if you go into their Discord, it was very engaging, very fun. Everything around the crocodile, which is the icon and emblem of the brand. And then they started doing co-creation, where they published in their Discord different art directions around the crocodile. And so the same symbol, but really different art directions. And they asked the community to vote for their preferred art direction. So that's like first milestone. Then based on that, they are basically creating something. We don't know exactly what, but including 100% the community in that co-creation process. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, there are a lot of Web3 projects really overhyped. Maybe you can advise, sorry, maybe you can advise our audience how to avoid some kind of project. Maybe they can avoid this kind of overhyped community, perhaps?
Well, it always goes back to do your own research. And, there's always an element of, again, trust, but it's a leap of faith. You can gather all the information, as much information on the project as you can. And then it's long term. Like in these bear markets, it's very difficult. We can see that free mints are the way to go. If you look at Goblin Town, so there are a lot of other projects coming up with free mints, the Wizards and things like that. So that's a very interesting new way of building a project where the monetization is after the fact through royalties. So no, it's all about doing our research and taking a bet on something you believe in.
I remembered last time we had a conversation with you, Oliver. You talked about how Web2 is more like audience and Web3 is a community and community wanting to win. Maybe you want to repeat that to our panels and our audience today?
Yeah, sure. So it goes back to what I was saying earlier, where it's a mindset shift where brands go from having followers in that like one-way type of discussion to community that are fully engaged, fully vocal and opinionated about what the brand should do and has done wrong, has done good, and should do in the future. So it's just a completely new type of relationship that's powered by technology through the new kind of products, digital products, NFTs and metaverse experiences. So it's the next big step for me in brand building, powering virtual commerce. And it's very important to get on that bandwagon early to understand the space.
Thank you so much. I think to wrap up our conversation today, maybe you could give advice to our audience. If we have we have audience maybe starting up their business, starting up their business ideas, or some artists, they're trying to build up their community. Maybe you have some advice for them, for all of us.
Maybe I'll kick it off here. I would just say it's about being consistent. You want to have a consistent message to them and a really consistent cadence too. Like you don't want to, be very vocal for 2 weeks and then disappear for 2 months. So I think that's the hardest thing about managing any community. It's just like consistently chatting with them. And when things are good, it's really easy. And when you have a lot to talk about, it's really easy. When you don't have a lot to talk about, it definitely gets harder. And when things aren't going well, that's when it's the hardest. I think a really good example was the AccuTar drop. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Micah Johnson and the AccuTar drop, but the drop did not go well. They ended up locking all the funds into the smart contract, basically, and they weren't able to release those funds. And instead of hiding and running away, he went into their Discord and they had a live conversation, very raw, very in the moment, a lot of emotion. And he just talked directly to the community right after that happened. He didn't hide, he didn't run away. And I think that meant a lot to the community. People really supported him and the project after that, even though they had a critical mistake. That just shows that he did a great job building that community up, and when they kind of ran into some trouble, that community kind of held them up and still supported them and still were there for them. And I think that really is due to how well he's kind of built that community and how well he interacted with them and always interacted with them from the good times to the bad times.
Yeah, 100% agree on that. But also, it's I think people should not try to overthink when to release something to people. It's oh, is this editing good enough? Is lighting in the right angle? It doesn't matter, right? If it's not in the right place today, maybe after 3 pieces of content that you push out to the community, it's gonna go in the right place. So a lot of people do hold back on releasing content, releasing information, releasing updates, because they just start to overthink, and if it's good enough, if it's structured properly, nobody cares, and there is no right or wrong about what is the right structure. It's only right in your head, really. So yeah, that's another piece of advice that goes together with the consistency, because if you do overthink about whether something is good or not to be shared, then you kind of fall off on being consistent in what you put out there. And also what Olivier said before about brands trying to use very different language. It's also the way how you talk to people. Don't try to talk to them from customer support level, because they're the same humans who want to talk to the equally similar humans, not to some robot AI that is trying to serve their needs in a very dry format.
Yeah, I strongly agree with both Ivan and Angel. I think consistency especially is the most important thing, but also authenticity. I think a lot of artists, focusing mainly on artists rather than brands, for artists, whenever they try to build community, they kind of force it in a way, and really that you will end up failing if you try to do that, because you're not being your most authentic self. And if, building a community is not something that you know how to do, then don't dive headfirst into doing that. Start small with conversations one-on-one with other individuals. Find people that you connect with within the space. And then from there, from building organic friendships, organic interrelationships with other people, you already have a community. You don't have to like dive headfirst into building a Discord and telling everybody, hey, come join my Discord. It can start small from Twitter DMs, conversations, tweets, conversations. And then from there, when you're comfortable and you feel like you're ready to have a bigger community, then you can like, you know, make that Discord, spend 12 hours in your Discord, have your AMAs and have your Twitter spaces, you know. So I think, yeah, authenticity and really taking your time. Like, I think a lot of artists forget that there's no rush. Being in the NFT space in particular, we see other people's success, we see how other people approach their own communities, and we want to catch up to that immediately. And as obviously the space gets oversaturated, people have this sense of, I don't know, impending, I need to do this now, I need to have a community now. And really it's just like you have to go at your own pace. And that's the only way you can have an organic community.
Yes, commitment. I think it's, you know, just like everyone said, you enter Web3 for the long term, absolutely not as a touch and go. Selling something is just the beginning. It's not the end goal. And so just be ready from a resource point of view, like where are you going to build a community and how are you going to maintain it? So have the right resources, and also absolutely don't be afraid to test. We are constantly, like last week, for example, we created a treasure hunt in one of our metaverse penthouse that we built on Spatial, and everything was done through Discord, and we had more than 300 people participating in this, and people went crazy about trying. We made it very difficult. We do poker nights. We have on average 40 people doing poker nights on Wednesday. So we keep adding new things, and Discord is great for that because it allows you to, you know, build all these games. So go into territories and activations that you might have never done before as a brand, but just know that this space is very forgiving.
Thank you so much, everyone, for this amazing and insightful conversation. And I think that's it for the day.